King's wives. Some people died and some knives. That's right, it's time for the top 10 messed up things kings did to their wives, part 2. Number 10. What's yours is mine. Maintaining a dynasty and trying to rule over a people is hard. Many people have done it in the past, but if you notice, there isn't that many kingdoms left. So, it's no surprise that in Egypt, one of the largest and most successful civilizations of the ancient world and of all time, had some political strife. Berenice III had lost her husband Ptolemy, and she was doing her best to maintain power. In some serious Alabama energy, Ptolemy XI was made king, a stepson and half-brother. The man wanted it all to himself, and can you blame him? I mean, look at the pyramids. Nice, I'd want him too. He promptly unalived his new queen because power moves. Some people didn't like this, and in some form of poetic justice, he was unalived. By the people. What's the lesson in this one? Maybe that you can't trust your strange, closely knit inbred family members? I'm not sure, honestly, but it's just messed up. Number 9. Double trouble. This one isn't exactly about a king removing a queen like his wife, but it is about kings ceasing the life of their queen, more specifically their mother. Clyricus and Oxythris were the sons of Amistris, a woman handed off in marriage by the mad lad Macedonian himself, Alexander the Great. Well, like a lot of ye olde history, there was some power struggles. A power vacuum had been created in the death of Dionysus. You'd think that wouldn't happen over and over again, but you'll find that a lot in history. The power struggle was solved, and eventually Amistris retired and remarried. Named a town after herself. Things were okay for Amistris. Things were good. But one day her sons came to visit and noticed the Mon looked a little thirsty. So they drowned her in a river in a power grab that pretty much immediately backfired, as they too were unalived by the next guy in line. Pretty similar to the last story, but that's history, isn't it? Number 8. One too many. Sometimes when you're king, you're gonna have more than one wife that's 6 feet under. It's just how it goes sometimes. However, I believe there is no better example of this than Afzal Khan, whose actions were so egregious that I did a literal double take after learning about what this king had done. See, Afzal didn't just unalive one wife or a couple like history's favorite King Henry VIII. No, my busy bees. He is responsible for the termination of 63 wives, not wives. I'm not sure what kind of guy would make that kind of mistake. In fear of losing them to an invader who treated women slightly better, he had his soldiers give them a tall glass of drowning. Those who tried to escape were cut down without mercy. I lived next door to the chief. He invited me in for a cup of tea. I sat down and he said, "That ain't it." You know something's messed up if I'm overusing that joke. Number 7. 20 years of therapy. Elizabeth of Bosnia was a very unpopular queen, and unfortunately had to often defend her throne with violence. As it turns out, this did not bode well. Many people wanted revenge, and honestly, just to take her position of power. Elizabeth, understanding perhaps her times might be numbered, was going to try everything she could to keep her bloodline in power. The passing of her king husband only made things worse. In her attempts to escape the impending doom, she was captured and imprisoned by her new owners. She was eventually released. Oh, did I say released? I meant as punishment she was strangled in front of her daughter. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm more of a bumbling fool, but that just can't be healthy for you. Emotional damage! Number 6. Bad divorce. Pedro of Castile was doing as the European monarchs do. Sometimes you gotta marry for alliances. Sure, it makes sense. Your kingdom is much less likely to get steamrolled by a larger kingdom if you have an alliance with a fellow kingdom or with a bigger one itself. Pedro of Castile, he married a young Blanche of Bourbon so France and Spain could just seem just a wee bit more snug. But Pedro just wasn't having it. What he was having instead was a mistress named Maria. So instead of enduring a loveless marriage, he had poor Blanche locked away in a tower, just like Sleeping Beauty. Except a handsome prince wasn't coming to rescue this damsel in distress, but a man with a black hood and a sharpened axe, as Pedro had her unalived. I was gonna make a joke about Rapunzel and let down some hair so she could make an escape, but I mean, that's just awful, really. I mean, imagine being locked up in a tower for a long time. Sure, I love the indoors, but you gotta let me out at some point, Chief. Do you think I can get a food delivery app up in that tower? Maybe. Number 5. Women's rights. Listen, it would be difficult to talk about this list without bringing it up. And ladies, all I want you to know is that you're gorgeous and I love you. But queens of the past, although they might be royalty, were severely lacking in rights. This is a time when men ruled, literally, and unfortunately that means a lot of women got the raw end of the deal. Just as an example, women have only been able to vote in the United States since 1920. There was a lot of work that had to be done, which sounds like a long time, but it really isn't. Women of the past, and especially the medieval world, basically needed a man to walk through their life, whether they liked it or not. Can't own property, business, can't sign contracts, basically everything they need to do has to go through their husbands first. Sure, royals had it easier, but I'd argue if someone could just unalive you or lock you away in a tower without consequence, do you really have rights at all to begin with? I don't know, I don't think so, that's not right. We're gonna do better, we'll do better. Number 4. Herod the Not So Great. Herod the Great was the king of Judea in 37 BC. Herod the Great was also a monster. I know I've given Henry VIII grief for Anne Boleyn, but Buddy here, he just throws out wives like it's his business. Well, it kinda was, actually. He was a busy man, having an estimated 14 children with different wives. There's also a good chance that there was more, being since that female births were just not recorded. He also unalived a lot of other people too. This guy was just so much of a tyrant that both Jewish and Christian faiths depict him as a tyrant. Way to go, dude. Nice. Number 3, the mayor's alibi. Alright, here's a modern one for you. Yes, I know the mayor is not a king. I understand that. But they still hold a decent amount of power, and this happened in the 90s, which I hate to bring up because that was a really long time ago. Yeah, I know, right? I know, I remember that too. Mayor Barry Waite and his wife were just as comfy as peas and carrots when one day his wife was mysteriously unalived. Barry was not a suspect at first, but slowly as time went on, his alibi began to unravel, and he seemed less and less trustworthy. As multiple financial-based scandals were beginning to rear their heads, it later became understood that his wife was going to seek legal aid after learning about Barry's doings, strangling her in a fit of rage. Years later, he was convicted and sentenced to 40 years in prison. So maybe we haven't learned much from our historical past. A man in power in fear of losing it to a woman has removed her from the equation. I guess we'll never change. Number 2, one last ride. King Philip V was down bad. The CEO of Naughty Time. This man liked to get down and to be a certain kind of dirty. He could not get enough of women. He loved them, his wives and mistresses included. Reported to try and get the deed done at least 3 times a day. Now you might be saying to yourself, but Big Ched, what's so wrong with that? Everyone likes a little mooey once in a while. Hey, I hear you. A little toe curling once in a while, it's a great thing, if you catch my drift. But Philip may have enjoyed it just a little too much, as when his beloved wife was on her deathbed, he tried to squeeze in one more D appointment. Your wife is dying and all you can think about is a little afternoon delight? A bouquet of flowers and I love you would have been fine, but who am I to judge? You go ahead. Weirdo. Number 1, the Last Czar. Nicholas II of the Romanovs was the last Czar of Russia. What did he do to his wife? Well, not much, actually, and that's the issue at hand. It's his inaction that hurt her and the family the most. You see, Russia was an interesting nation in the early 1900s. As most nations were modernizing, Russia was still somewhat stuck in the past. A lack of rights for anyone, no industry, and the monarch was kind of oppressive. Well, Nicholas the Tsar was going to change it. At some point, maybe. Okay, well, he didn't. It would take a whole history class to break down what actually happened during those crucial years, but in a nutshell, there was this new fun idea called communism. And with the lack of the Tsar's support to the people, this is serious neglect we're talking about here, the people revolted. The monarchy was overthrown, and in an event that's actually quite sad, the Tsar and his whole family were unalived by the new government. His inaction got his wife done in. Way to go, Nikki. That's gonna wrap it up for me today, guys. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe here at Bumblebee. And if you like when I do an Emperor Palpatine impression, then check out my socials linked down below and stay sweet, my little honeybees.
Yes, do it. Do it now.